President Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed died on the 13th of May 2022 at the age of 73. He was born in September 1948, before the UAE existed as a singular nation and before the discovery of oil in the Emirates. In his lifetime, he saw the meteoric rise of the nation from a collection of Bedouin and fishing villages to one of the leading nations and most competitive economies in the Middle East. As the eldest son of Sheikh Zayed, the founding father of the UAE, Sheikh Khalifa's involvement in public life began at a very young age. You are listening to Beyond the Headlines. I'm your host, Faisal Salah, and today we're looking back at the life of Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed.
Sheikh Khalifa was given responsibilities by his father at a very young age, just after Sheikh Zayed became ruler of Abu Dhabi. He appointed Sheikh Khalifa to a post in LA, and he became Crown Prince 3 years later. So from a very young age, Sheikh Khalifa was involved in the building of Abu Dhabi with his father, and then, of course, with the building of the Federation after 1971. It was a big challenge, I guess, for a young man who had come out of school and done some preliminary military training to be thrown into the task of helping his father create a new country. It's something, a challenge that most people at that age don't get, and that set the pattern for Sheikh Khalifa's commitment to government and to, helping to develop the Emirates, in particular Abu Dhabi.
Peter Hellyer is a historian and contributor to The National. He is a documentary filmmaker who arrived in the country shortly after its formation. While Sheikh Zayed focused on uniting and leading the young country, his son Sheikh Khalifa also took on more responsibility. He became the Prime Minister of Abu Dhabi and the Emirates Defense and Finance Minister. The decades following the formation of the country were ones of rapid expansion. Sheikh Khalifa's involvement in the country reflected that growth. Peter believes that although Sheikh Khalifa gained many titles and responsibilities, he never lost sight of the needs of the people.
I think as Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, and effectively running Abu Dhabi for his father, for Sheikh Zayed, Sheikh Khalifa's main commitment and main focus was on providing services and support for the people in terms of infrastructure, in terms of providing funds that people could use to build buildings. We've seen as president the enormous impact of the Sheikh Khalifa housing program, which has benefited literally thousands of Emiratis across all of the Northern Emirates. So a desire to help people better themselves, if you like, was a main focus of his work throughout in Abu Dhabi and then later as president. He also put a lot of time and effort into building the armed forces as Deputy Supreme Commander, and insisted that the UAE armed forces should be built up. There should be, proper training provided through the military colleges, that there should be the appropriate equipment built. And in that, he was following the line of his father, because Sheikh Zayed always felt that the UAE needed to have its own armed forces to be able to, to defend itself. But the main focus, I think, for Sheikh Khalifa, apart from the military, was his absolute devotion to meeting people's needs, the infrastructure and housing in particular.
Although Sheikh Khalifa's policies around building infrastructure were considered to be instrumental to the construction boom in Abu Dhabi, his focus on betterment for the people of the UAE was a core tenet of his rule.
He was quietly very generous, and his public acts indicate that generosity. He was not, I think, somebody who would have been happy in the middle of a large crowd. He preferred smaller numbers of people rather than large. And that's where he was seen at his best, when he could relax in a less formal environment. But his main commitment in his sort of up in Al Ain, or being chairman of the Abu Dhabi Executive Council in Abu Dhabi, as Crown Prince and then as president, was trying to meet the needs of the people. That's what drove him.
2004 saw the tragic passing of Sheikh Zayed, a man who had become the symbol of the nation. The role of leader now went to his son, Sheikh Khalifa. Peter reminisces about that time and what a formidable task lay in front of the new president of the UAE.
When he came to power as president in 2004, the UAE was in a state of shock. The founding father had died. I remember seeing on the streets the crowds. I remember seeing the tears in people's eyes. And that was from expatriates as well as from Emiratis. At the time Sheikh Zayed died, any Emirati who was under 45 or under 40 would not have had any real memory of a world without Zayed. Okay? So the country lost its support. It lost the man who created it. It lost the founding father. And what Sheikh Khalifa did, with support from the other rulers, obviously, but what Sheikh Khalifa did was to show people, the foundations are solid and they're secure. We can move forward. We've lost our founding father, but that doesn't threaten the stability and the nature of the state. And looking back, I think we'll see that as being a major contribution as well. It's not easy in a country that sort of emerges from nowhere, led by a dominant figure, and then suddenly that figure's gone. And that transition to getting used to the idea of, the founding father's gone, we have a new president, what's going to happen? That's not an easy transition for any country or any people to go through. Sheikh Khalifa made sure that here in the Emirates, we went through it absolutely fine.
After the death of his father, Sheikh Khalifa said, "Despite our bereavement, I would like to say that Zayed has not left us. He has immortalized himself in our hearts through his noble deeds. He will remain among us forever." Peter says the Sheikh had some similarities to his father and had the benefit of Sheikh Zayed's example.
He learned to serve the people, I think, if I had to sum it up. He learned to be kind. He learned to be generous. He learned to listen to people of low station as well as high station. He learned to have a tolerant outlook on the nature of society. He learned to welcome the emergence of the UAE as a place where expatriates as well as nationals could feel comfortable and at home. He reflected the philosophy of his father. He wasn't a copy of his father. There are differences, obviously, but the underlying principles that drove his father forward and provided his father with the determination to build the UAE, Sheikh Khalifa got all that and learnt all that from his father.
Sheikh Khalifa had already been such an integral part of the building of the UAE, and the next decade saw more expansion. A large part of this was construction and building projects. More than 35 billion dirhams has been lent, helping to create more than 6,000 major buildings in Abu Dhabi. There were initiatives that offered housing loans for Emiratis or waived repayments for those who were unable to pay, as well as programs that offered eligible Emiratis free housing. Sheikh Khalifa, as Deputy Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, also believed in building a nation which had a unified and well-trained military. His chairmanships of Abu Dhabi's Supreme Petroleum Council, founded in 1988, and the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, which he was instrumental in creating in 1976, were a testament to his understanding the importance of investing in the country's future. He once said that the future of the country is linked to its ability to manage its wealth in the interests of future generations. In January 2014, news came of Sheikh Khalifa having suffered a stroke. There was an outpouring of public support. After undergoing surgery, the Sheikh was in a stable condition and continued his duties. Supported by members of the government, he continued his duties as president until the announcement of his death on May 13, 2022.
A feeling of sadness, of knowing that the time was coming. I think, in a way, there's a feeling of, for me, of satisfaction that the challenge Sheikh Khalifa took on, that his father gave him to take on, to succeed him, was one that he delivered on. He delivered the goods. And I think he was a good president and someone who helped to solidify the UAE, its status, its stability, moved us on towards the first 50 years. So it's sadness, but there's a kind of satisfaction that, yes, he delivered. He did what he promised he would do. To sum up Sheikh Khalifa in very, very few words, I would say that he was a kind and a good man. And he displayed that throughout his life and throughout his service to Abu Dhabi and to the UAE. A kind and a good man.
During Sheikh Khalifa's presidency, the UAE saw some great achievements, including going to space, organizing a World Expo, hosting the Pope, and leading the country through the pandemic. For me, as a young man growing up in the Emirates, it never seemed like the vision Sheikh Zayed set for the country was wavering. On the contrary, we were on a strong path for success. You've been listening to Beyond the Headlines. I've been your host, Faisal Salah. Thanks to Peter Hellyer for his contribution to the episode. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to get all the latest episodes. This episode was produced by Aisha Khan and Arthur Edison.